Change usually starts small, not with a big decision, not with a dramatic moment. It starts with a quiet thought that something is not working anymore. A routine feels heavy, a habit feels old, a situation feels tight. You notice it in small ways. You wake up tired in the same way every day. You repeat the same conversations. You promise yourself things will be different later. Not today, later. Most people recognize this feeling. It shows up at work when the days blend together. It shows up in relationships that feel stuck but familiar. It shows up in personal habits that no longer help but still feel safe. You know something could change. You also know it would cost something. Time, energy, comfort, certainty. So you pause. You do not reject change directly. You delay it. You tell yourself now is not the right moment. You tell yourself you need more information. You tell yourself you are too busy. These thoughts feel reasonable. They feel calm. They remove pressure, and for a while that feels good. Nothing breaks, the day continues, the routine holds. You do what you did yesterday, and because nothing bad happens, your body relaxes. Staying the same feels safe. This happens in very normal ways. You think about leaving a job, but you know how this one works. You think about changing a habit, but the old one is familiar. You think about speaking up, but silence keeps things smooth. You are not choosing pain, you are choosing comfort. Comfort is quiet. It does not ask much. It does not surprise you. It lets you move through the day without thinking too hard. Change asks questions. Comfort answers them before they are asked. Over time, staying the same starts to feel like stability, even when it costs you something, even when it slowly drains you. The cost is spread out. It is hard to see. It does not demand attention. You may even feel proud of staying steady, of being reliable, of not making sudden moves. From the outside, it can look like patience. From the inside, it feels like rest. Change stays in the background, not rejected, just postponed. And the longer it waits, the heavier it feels. The idea grows larger, the risk feels bigger. The comfort of the familiar grows stronger. So most change never begins with fear of failure. It begins with comfort doing its job. Change does not fail because people are lazy. It fails because it touches parts of us we do not want to see. When the thought of change appears, it brings something with it. Fear, doubt, shame, a sense of not being enough. These feelings rise quietly. They are not dramatic, but they are uncomfortable. So we look away. Jung wrote about the parts of ourselves we push into the dark, not because they are bad, but because they do not fit the person we want to be. We like to see ourselves as capable, stable, in control. Change threatens that image. To change is to admit something is not working, and that can feel like failure. So the mind protects itself. It hides the discomfort. It softens the edges. It says there is no rush. It says things are fine for now. It says this is just how life is. The resistance is quiet. You may tell yourself you are being realistic. You may say you know your limits. You may say this is simply who you are. These thoughts feel calming. They remove pressure. They allow you to stay where you are without feeling weak. But underneath, something is being avoided. It might be the fear of losing an identity you know well, even if it no longer fits. It might be the fear of being seen differently by others. It might be the fear of finding out you tried and still failed. These fears are human. Almost everyone has them. But many people do not want to admit them. It feels better to say you are content than to say you are afraid. It feels better to say you accept things than to say you are stuck. So the uncomfortable parts are pushed down. They are not gone, they are just quieter. Over time, this becomes a habit. Each time change appears, the same inner movement happens. A small tension, a quick explanation, a return to comfort. The pattern repeats. Eventually, you no longer feel the original fear clearly. You only feel a sense that change is unnecessary or unrealistic or not meant for you. That is how resistance hides, not as refusal, but as calm certainty. Change rarely happens because the parts that resist it are often the parts we do not want to admit are there. When change does not happen, it almost never feels like a failure. It feels explained. It feels justified. It feels like the correct outcome of careful thinking. After the first discomfort fades, the mind begins to arrange meaning around the situation. It builds a story that makes staying the same feel intentional rather than passive. Nietzsche was deeply interested in how humans create stories to protect their sense of order. He noticed that people rarely act first and explain later in a neutral way. Instead, they explain in a way that makes the action feel necessary, even noble. When change does not happen, the explanation often arrives quickly and smoothly. You tell yourself that change takes time. You tell yourself that rushing would be irresponsible. You tell yourself that you are being patient, realistic, grounded. These thoughts sound sensible. They calm the body. They remove pressure. They allow you to feel in control while nothing actually moves. The story does not feel like an excuse. It feels like clarity. Over time, this explanation becomes familiar. Each time the idea of change appears, the same reasoning steps in. You do not feel tension for long. The explanation fills the gap. It feels obvious. It feels mature. The story serves a purpose. It protects your identity. It keeps you aligned with the version of yourself you want to believe in. Someone who is thoughtful, someone who does not act on impulse, someone who sees the bigger picture. Nietzsche would not ask whether this story is true or false. He would ask what it does. What does it allow you to avoid? What does it preserve? The story preserves comfort. It preserves certainty. It protects you from admitting that fear may be involved. Fear of loss, fear of change itself, fear of discovering that effort might not lead to improvement. These fears are quiet. They do not shout. They hide behind reasonable language. The story turns uncertainty into order. It makes waiting feel purposeful. It makes delay feel like a choice. As the story repeats, the original desire to change becomes weaker, not because it disappeared, but because it is no longer heard. The explanation speaks louder. At some point, you stop asking whether change is needed. You only ask whether it is practical. And the answer is often no. Not now, not yet, maybe later. This is how resistance becomes invisible. It no longer feels like resistance. It feels like logic. It feels like balance. It feels like wisdom. And because it feels wise, it goes unchallenged. Nothing forces you to stay the same. Nothing stops you directly. The story does all the work. It settles the question before it can grow uncomfortable. This is why change rarely happens. Not because people do not understand what needs to change, but because the story they tell themselves makes staying the same feel right. Change does not fail quietly. It fails by keeping things exactly as they are. When nothing moves, something still happens. The same roles stay in place, the same habits repeat, the same outcomes return. Machiavelli did not spend much time on intentions. He watched results. He looked at what actions produced in the real world. Silence, delay, and comfort all produce results, even when they feel passive. When change does not happen, systems benefit. Workplaces stay structured the same way, families keep their roles, relationships follow familiar paths. The people who are already comfortable remain comfortable. The people who adapt remain the ones who adapt. Stability looks calm from the outside. It feels safe on the surface. But stability also locks things in. It decides who leads and who waits, who speaks and who adjusts, who carries weight and who avoids it. When someone considers change and then delays it, nothing breaks. That is the key. Because nothing breaks, the system reads this as success. The structure holds, the pattern works, so it repeats. Over time, systems learn from behavior, not from thoughts. They do not know what you considered, they only know what you did or did not do. Comfort becomes a signal. It tells the system that no pressure is needed, that no response is required, that things can continue as they are. Machiavelli would notice how often stability is mistaken for virtue. Staying the same is praised as loyalty, as patience, as realism. But the result is simple. Power stays where it already sits. Influence remains uneven. Old habits become permanent. Change requires friction. Even small change does. When friction is avoided, the surface stays smooth, but nothing underneath shifts. This does not mean people choose harm. It means systems do not need cruelty to remain unchanged. They only need comfort. The longer change is delayed, the more expensive it becomes, not in effort, but in risk. The gap between where things are and where they could be grows wider. The weight of the decision increases, and that makes delay feel even safer by comparison. From the outside, nothing seems wrong. From the inside, something feels heavy but familiar. That familiarity becomes its own defense. Machiavelli would not ask whether this is good or bad. He would ask what it creates. What kind of world forms when comfort is chosen again and again? Who benefits? Who adjusts? Who waits? Change rarely happens because staying the same is rewarded every day it continues. Most of the time, we already know this. We just don't like hearing it said.